and welcome to Book Witches with a B. I'm Orja.
And I'm Colleen.
And in our podcast, we do a deep dive into some of our favorite books using our degree backgrounds. I studied literature.
I studied sociology with a minor in literature and cinema.
So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hey everyone! All right, let's start this chapter recap, shall we? And for the purpose of this podcast, because my room is a mess behind me, we're pretending we're in this lovely tropical paradise, especially since the weather is getting colder now. All right, so chapter 31, the excerpt from the beginning. July 1st, the anniversary of the Battle of Aricia, is hereby proclaimed Reunification Day and will be celebrated throughout Navarre on the state every year to honor the lives lost during the war to save our kingdom from separatists and those saved by the Treaty of Aricia. Royal Proclamation of the King Tory the Wise. So, Chapter 1 basically starts with a knock on Violet's door. It's Xaden dropping by saying that he left the previous day early because he had an early leadership meeting. Earlier that day, of course, was earlier the day before, rather, was of course when they had sex and Violet blew up her room basically with lightning. So Xaden offers to help clean up the mess that they made with all the lightning and whatnot. And as they're cleaning, they come across Violet's book of fables, the one about the wyvern and the venom. And Xaden's looking at it. Apparently, he's never seen the book before either. And he notices that there's a letter tucked into one of the pages. As Violet opens the letter, she realizes that it's from her father. And I will read the letter later on in our deep dive discussion, and we do talk about it, so hold tight. But basically, the letter from her father is saying, like, Violet, by now you will be a scribe, and you should know that power, absolute power, corrupts those in power. And I know that by the time you find this letter, when the time comes, with that knowledge that you're gaining, you'll do the right thing. It's very cryptic. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to Violet. She's very confused about it. Xaden is not that familiar with this book of fables, so they're kind of going through them, and she's telling some of the different fables that she's grown up with that apparently are not common knowledge. She tells Xaden that the fables in the book are all about the corrupting influence of power. As they're speaking, they touch upon the elephant in the room, which is them sleeping together. Basically, Violet knows that she's not going to be able to separate sex and emotion, and she knows that her heart is on the path towards falling for Xaden. And so she tries to bring it up with him, and he immediately shuts it down. He says, we can sleep together, we cannot fall for each other. He's extremely insistent. They can do the physical thing, they cannot fall for each other. Violet is a little upset by that because she suspects that he's probably falling for her, and she thinks to herself, if we keep sleeping together, there's no way that we're not going to end up falling for one another. And so she admits to him that she, you know, wants to protect her own heart. She also says, you can't tell me how I'm supposed to feel about you, especially if we're sleeping together. And so until a time when you can admit to yourself that that's what's happening for you too, I don't want to sleep with you anymore. About a month has passed since that conversation, and Violet is with her squad, and they're discussing King Tari's plans to celebrate Unification Day at Basgiath. Xaden and Violet have been shamelessly flirting with each other mind to mind as these conversations are going around, in person around them. And she is at her wit's end, basically. She tells him, like, you know what? Fine. I take back what I said. You don't have to fall in love with me, whatever. If you can admit that you have feelings for me, then maybe we can sleep together. And it's also about 10 days before graduation. So, their time together at Basgiath is actually coming to an end. While they're discussing Reunification Day, Violet thinks on the fact that not only is it that day, it is also the 6th anniversary of Brennan's death. They are all to attend a party along with all of the other quadrants at Basgiath College. And so Violet gets all dressed up and pretty. She's basically wearing, like, a skirt and top combo. The skirt's very flowy and it has like a big slit up the leg, and her hair is blowing and she looks beautiful. Liam does attend with Violet, but Violet notices that Xaden is nowhere to be found, and she thinks about the fact that not only is this a day when everyone is celebrating reunification and Brennan's death, it's also a day where people are actively celebrating the death of Xaden's father and the death of all of the parents of all of the marked ones, now that we know that all of their parents were killed and they're orphans. She also has a really heartwarming moment where she realizes that people are reacting very poorly to Liam beside her, and she stands up for him, and she knows that it's wrong that people are so biased against the marked ones. I mean, this is her friend at this point. And so she tells Liam, you don't have to be here. And then Liam says that he's not there because they didn't order him to. He's there because it's his job to protect Violet, and he's going to protect Violet. He's there voluntarily because he wants to be there for her. It's a very sweet moment. So once Violet realizes where Xaden must be, she basically leaves the party, and we get to chapter 32. As for the 107 innocents, the children of the executed officers, they now carry what shall be known as the rebellion relic, transferred by the dragon who carried out the king's justice. And to show the mercy of our great king, they will all be conscripted into the prestigious riders' quadrant at Basgiath, so they may prove their loyalty to our kingdom with their service or with their death. Addendum 4.2, the Treaty of Aretia. Violet finds Xaden sitting halfway across the parapet. Once again, Reunification Day is also actually a celebration of the day of his father's death. Violet decides that, their little squabble about sex versus emotions be damned. She takes her shoes off and she sticks her hands out for balance, and she walks across that parapet to find Xaden. And it's such an incredible moment and I love it so much. We talk a little bit about that in deep dive as well. When Xaden sees her, he basically jumps up and like runs the rest of the way to her, and he's like, "You need to turn around." She says, "You're up here too. It's dangerous." And he basically hits back with, "Yeah, my shadows can save my life. Can your lightning save your life?" Violet finally tells Xaden that she wants to be with him, and she knows that he wants it too. And at this moment, with all of the emotions of the day and everything weighing down on him, he's tired of fighting it as well, and he admits that he's falling for her as well. They go off the parapet and head to his room, and oh boy, do they do it. The rest of this chapter is basically just lot of lightning bolts happening. I think she said that they're going on 5. Wink wink nudge nudge. It's probably very early in the morning by this time, and they're still going at it, and they are interrupted by the sound of Garrick knocking on the door, and he tells them to come out because they're under attack. And there's this very funny moment where Xaden is like, "There better be somebody dying." And Garrick is like, "Trust me, I would rather be doing anything else right now, but it is life and death. Like, there could be people dying." Which brings us to chapter 33. The inability to control a powerful signet is just as dangerous to a rider and everyone in their vicinity as never manifesting one. Major Offender's Guide to the Rider's Quadrant, Unauthorized Edition. Violet and Xaden hurry into formation in a panic, and Xaden has given Violet his rider's jacket to keep her warm because it's very cold outside. There's a lot of fun, jabbing back and forth with Rhiannon, and there's a moment where Dane comes out and is talking to them, and Rhiannon like leans over Violet so he can't see that she's wearing Xaden's jacket. Xaden soon informs Violet through their mind bond that this is actually just the beginning of the final war games before graduation. Colonel Atos announces the scenario and explains the rules. It's a 5-day exercise. Each squad is to choose an outpost, and Fourth Wing is stationed at Athbine. Violet remembers that that's where Xaden, Garrick, and Bodhi were the night she saw them out, but Xaden wouldn't tell her why they were there, and she also knows that it's past the wards. So essentially, what's happening here is of the wings, the wing leader and whatever squad he chooses, they're assigned an outpost, and the rest of the squads within the wing get to choose their outposts accordingly, is the idea. Dane chooses the El Tuval outpost for the squad, and they're given 30 minutes to pack whatever they need for the next few days and return. When Violet gets back to formation, she sees her dragons on the field, and she notices that Andarna has a harness that's similar to Terran's. Andarna tells her that it hooks into Terran's harness so that if she can't keep up with the flying, she can actually hook on to Terran and ride with them. And she reveals that Xaden had it made for her. So basically, Andarna is coming with Violet onto this War Games thing. Right as they're about to head out, Xaden tells Dane that he'll be taking Liam, Violet, and Imogen with him to be part of the Fourth Wing headquarters team. His reasoning is that his reasoning is that Sigale and Terran can't be apart for more than 3 days. This is a 5-day exercise. Dane argues with him, and the two kind of shout at each other back and forth about where she's going to be safer. Dane insists that if she goes with Xaden, she's going to be in trouble. And Xaden insists that Violet will always be safer with him than she would be with Dane. Violet tells Xaden that she trusts him and that she'll go with him, and she tells Dane that she's made her choice, and Dane has this moment where he looks at her and he just says, "Fine, I'll miss you," and looks away. While all of this is happening, Violet notices Colonel Atos is acting strangely towards Xaden. Dane is acting, that overbearing protectiveness again after having kind of shut down a little bit after the last time. And Violet doesn't really know what to do with it, but she's not going to think about it. It's time to go, which brings us to chapter 34. The first known griffin attack occurred in 1 AU after unification, near what is now the trading post of Resin. At the edge of the dragon-protected border, the post has always been vulnerable to attack and, over the course of the past 6 centuries, has changed hands no less than 11 times in what has become a never-ending war to secure our borders from our power-hungry enemies. Navarre, an unedited history by Colonel Lewis Markham. So Violet, Liam, Imogen, Xaden, and the rest of his wing leader squad are on their way to Athbine, and they kind of stop a couple of hours out to rest and recuperate after the long flight. Violet knows that the final war games are always really deadly for the graduating class, but there's something else that's off that she can't quite put her finger on, and it's kind of feeling very unsettling to her. Out past the wards, Xaden and Violet are free to be a couple in public, as Xaden reassures Violet that he trusts every single person here with his life and they would never say anything to anyone. Violet also notes that out past the wards, magic feels different, and Taryn informs her that magic is wilder out past the wards, and it's harder for dragons to communicate with one another and to communicate with their riders out past the wards, where magic kind of is free and acts on its own, unlike it does when it's tamed within the wards of Navarre. Xaden and Violet go off somewhere to be alone, and they're kind of like flirting and kissing and fooling around a little, and then suddenly Xaden stops, his eyes go wide, and they are ambushed by a pair of griffin flyers who emerge from the brush. They see Violet's silver hair and realize that she is General Sorrengail's younger daughter. Violet is about to strike lightning at the riders when Xaden stops her and is like, "I'm so sorry. Please trust me. Let me explain." And then he starts talking to the Griffin riders and he says, "They're early." And it's this big shock, horribly shocking moment where Violet suddenly realizes Xaden knows these Griffin riders, the enemy. He knows them. Which brings us to chapter 35. In his last days of interrogation, Fen Ryerson lost touch with reality, railing against the kingdom of Navarre. He accused King Tari and all who came before him of a conspiracy so vast, so unspeakable, that it does not bear repeating by this historian. The execution was swift and merciful for a madman who cost untold lives. Navarre, an unedited history by Colonel Louis Markham. As Zayden speaks with the Flyers, Violet hears them talking about venom attacking villages. She realizes that everyone around them, the rest of the dragon riders have come, more griffin riders have come as well, and she realizes that everyone knows each other, and she is the only outsider here. Venin are men who have been corrupted by dark magic and who create flocks of winged creatures called wyvern, as we know from the fables. And basically, they travel the land looking for magic and power. Violet can't believe that people are talking about these creatures from the fables as if they're real. And while she's reeling from that and thinking about that, basically, Zayden and the Griffin Riders finish their conversation, tell him that he's been warned, and they fly off. Violet looks around and realizes that she's surrounded by separatists and feels the shock of betrayal. Liam urges her to give Zayden a chance to explain, and Zayden tells the others to leave and then asks Violet to consider whether they might have ended up on the wrong side of this war. He tells Violet that he's been providing weapons to the Griffin Flyers so that they can fight off the venom. They're real. They are people who can tap into magic without the aid of a dragon or griffin, and it corrupts and drains magic from the lands. These are the people who have been leveling towns and creating havoc and destruction, not the Griffin Riders. Violet suddenly realizes and asks Tarn if he knew what Zayden was up to, and he admits that him and Andarna did, but it was up to Violet to be smart and draw her own conclusions. The reason they don't attack Navarre is because of the wards, and leadership knows about the Venin attacking Puramil, which is the southern province outside their borders, but they choose to do nothing about it. The material used to power Navarre's wards are what's needed to fight the Venin, which is why the Griffin Flyers attack Navarre. So we hear of towns being leveled, that's Venin. We hear of towns being looted, that's the Griffin Riders trying to get the material that they need to fight off the Venin and Wyvern when they've basically been left powerless, allyless, and extremely vulnerable to those attacks. Zayden then gives Violet a black dagger, saying she should have one in case she ever needs to fight the Venom herself. Violet recognizes the dagger as being similar to one that her mother has, and Zayden informs her that her mother probably has one of them for the same reasons. Zayden says that he's risking everything by telling her this now, since he knows if Dane were ever to access her memories or find this out, they both know that Dane would simply follow the rules and turn them in. Zayden says that his own father was executed trying to help these people of Poromil, trying to help the Griffin Riders. Violet thinks about how there are no copies of the Wyvern folktale book in the archives apart from the one copy her father gave her, and then she has this moment where she's thinking about the history of Navarre and all of the texts that they have, and we do go over it in deep dive, so I don't want to give anything too away, but it shocks her to her core, and she basically is like, okay, clearly I have been missing something huge. And she's like, I will need an explanation, but okay for now. When they arrive at Athebyne, it looks completely deserted, and they sense that something is wrong that has nothing to do with the war games. Zayden then remembers, how Dane had insisted that Violet would die if she went with him, and he realizes that Dane has been secretly reading Violet's memories without knowing, and we go over this in deep dive as well. Zayden asks Violet, has Dane ever touched your face? And this is the moment that will be talked about forevermore. Yes, Dane has touched Violet's face 9 times on page. We basically assume at this point that those 9 times he's gotten information, and Violet has unknowingly betrayed Zayden and all of the marked ones because Dane got her memories without her knowing. Zayden had told her about Athbine in the past, so he must have known. So Dane must have known about this location and planned accordingly. They find an envelope with a note written in Colonel Atos's handwriting that says their mission is to survive the war games if they can. That's it. And Zayden realizes that they've been sent there to die. And that brings us to the end of our chapter recap for this episode. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we should start with section superlatives.
Mm.
Drama queen of the section. It's interesting. I'm gonna say Violet.
I was also gonna say Violet. I would say while I was reading this, I was going like when Dane was like, she's gonna die, I'm like, it's definitely Dane.
Yeah.
And then once we figure out what's happening, it makes more sense.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would
I
also
think
probably say Violet, but I also feel like it's justified.
it is justified. It is justified.
Yeah.
She is being dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that where she's being I think it's a drama queen, but like in a good way. Like she walks across that parapet and her like freaking dress, her hair whipping around her face because she is like, oh, Zayden needs me, essentially, which she's
Yeah.
not wrong.
She's not. Yes, yeah. I would
And
also maybe. Oh, so sorry.
no, go
Continue.
ahead.
I would say I'd also maybe throw Zayden's ring into the hat because we just talked about this, but the whole like you love me and she said loved and he just screams like love.
Love.
He's like love. Again, justified. Very
Justified.
dramatic in front of so many people. Like
Yes,
this is
at
such
that point
a
in
public
time, it's
fight.
like everyone is there. Are the Griffin Riders
The
there at that
Griffin
point
Rider?
too?
Yes. The Griffin Riders are just standing there being like, what the hell?
Could you imagine?
Like you show up, right? You're like, fighting, doing all the stuff,
Hmm.
whatever. Like clearly something's like going on. You don't really know all the details. And then
And then teen drama breaks out.
and you're like, I'm a grown woman, get it together. I just need my stuff so I can leave.
Yeah,
Like,
she's
have
like,
your lover spat
"Excuse
later.
me. This is literally life or death. Please stop."
Can we, like,
Mm.
have your lover spat later?
Yeah, we'll get to this in the deep dive, but the last chapter in this section is where Violet takes the information from her father's note, which I'll also read
Yes.
in the
Okay.
deep dive
Okay.
section, and is like going through it and is like, "Holy crap.
Okay.
Everything's a conspiracy."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes, so I think Violet and Xaden also, his whole like we can sleep together, but we can't fall in love when he has clearly already been in love with her for months now. Come on, man.
He's Zane for being so smart is
He's
so
so
so dumb.
dumb.
Although I will say this is just a spoiler for later. When we do see what he does when he loves somebody, I kind of get why he would be
Yes.
hesitant to admit it to himself. He is very
Yes.
committed. He's a very like
Extremely.
extremely committed, loyal person. And so I think he's like, if I admit to myself that I love you, you have, it's almost like in his mind, is like, you have no choice but to love me if I love you.
Yeah, which again, it's like very it's sweet. He doesn't want to force anything, but it's also like, dude, you who also not to mention she said she loved you already. So
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Craziest thing to happen in this section.
Where to begin? I mean, truly, I would say the Griffin Riders just casually showing up. I mean, I know we learn about the Venom and everything, but just them being
Mhm.
like, hey, like at that point, I was like, what?
Yeah,
Like
I
when
was
I read this the first
very
time, I was like,
surprised.
no.
I had a sneaking suspicion it was going to be something like that, but then when they showed up, I was like, "We're so," or at that point in time, I already knew that a second book and a third book were coming out, and I was like, "We're so." It's like we've been doing this one thing for this entire book. I thought surely that would be the cliffhanger at the end of the book. We were so
Yeah.
early on, we were so far away from the end of the book at this point. I was like, "What? What does this mean for this book?"
Yeah. And we learn. We're not gonna get there yet,
Yes.
but we learn. Um,
Yeah. Also, Dane, I didn't think of it the first time I was reading this book. Dane touching her face, other than the one when who was it? Amber. Other than that one situation with Amber where he like tried to do it and she was like, "Hey." I don't think
Mm-hmm.
I really noticed how many times he touched her face. And then
Mm-mm.
that bomb dropped, and I got so angry. I was like filled with rage. That was a pretty crazy moment.
That, yeah, I have some thoughts on that I will get into more later, but I cannot describe to you the deep rage that I had when we got there. I was so, oh, yeah, yes. Yeah, I would agree.
Yes.
That was also crazy in terms of like, I think that whole section of just like Violet really learning,
Hmm.
like, about herself, about her friends, about her parents, about the world around her. Like,
Yes.
all of these things Violet had to learn at one point in
Yeah. In
time
the span of like 20 minutes, basically.
when she just wanted to make out with her boyfriend.
Yes.
That's all she wanted to do. She just wanted to make out with her boyfriend.
She really did just want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and then let's see, most badass Violet moment. I like the walking across the parapet just to get to Xaden.
And, like, so casual about it. She was like, "Oh," I like, her learning how, like, now, how easy all of the stuff that she did that was so hard to her when she first came. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, she's in this, like, thing that will blow her away, like, it's a full-blown storm,
Yeah.
and she's just like, "Oh," not even
Casually
thinking about
walking.
it,
Whatever.
just walking, and Xaden's, losing his mind, and she's like, "Again, I am a
Yeah.
writer. I'm fine."
Yeah, she's like, "You're out here too, mister." Okay?
Yeah.
Like, also, I
Uh,
think like that whole thing where they're at the reunification ball and like the king is
mhm.
there, her mother's there, and she realizes that this is the day that Xaden's father died and everyone is
Yeah.
celebrating it, and she just is like, "Yeah, I'm leaving." I
The
think
way
that
that
was
she
pretty cool.
defends this
Liam.
the way she defends Liam, this solidified so much amazingness for Liam for me. Like, he's been really great up until this point, but the fact that they're also celebrating his parents,
Yeah.
like both of his
Deaths.
parents. I think we learned at this point that both of his parents
Both of
were
them died,
executed or
yeah.
whatever. And like being separated from his sister, like all of these awful things. And he's just like, nope, I made a promise, not even to Xaden, mostly to myself, that I would
Mhm.
be here with you. Xaden would never make me do this, and I'm going to follow that through.
Yeah, that was
Love it.
incredible. I love it. Yeah, I think maybe honorable mention to like badass moment would be that for Liam.
Yeah.
He
Sorry. I know that's
he
not
walked
Violet
into
related,
a
but I do
room.
love that.
It's fine. He walked into a room full of enemies and was like, "Yeah, no, you're not my enemy. I'm protecting you. That's it. We're
Mhm.
friends. I'm your protector. That's it."
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's time for Colleen's corner.
Colleen's
Colleen's
Corner.
corner.
Colleen's corner.
Woohoo! Okay, so actually the thing that I'm gonna talk about is Dane, because I'm angry about this, and specifically about, like, the concept of, like, bodily autonomy when it comes to that, and, like, the violation that I don't think, like, everyone maybe would fully grasp at the time, or, like, even I don't know if Violet fully grasps. I think she does to a degree, but it's, like, not only like, it's like a I don't know how to explain it. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. But, like, touching her without her permission is one thing, but they are used to casual touches, so, like, that
Mhm.
feels slightly different, which is why she didn't notice. But the concept of him using that and not telling her, like and,
Mhm.
like, I don't know if he can control it. I'm assuming maybe he can, maybe not, but, like, control, like, when he touches somebody. We don't really know that part, but the fact that he's not like, "Oh, sorry," like, he needed to know. He was like, "I'm going to take something from you that you're not giving me permission to take." And he never told her,
It
and I hate
feels
it deeply.
kind of predatory in like a really
I mean,
gross way. It is.
it's it's a version of assault, it's not sexual assault,
Yeah.
but I think it has similar ramifications, I think, almost. I mean, it's an invasion of your body
Mhm.
that you did not give consent to, you were not told that happened. Like, it's like, the fact that she was able like, she doesn't necessarily move on from it, but I think the fact that she was able to pivot because there were other, life-ending things happening,
Mhm.
but, like, all of that which, like, also with Dane, the man could have told her before she freaking left.
Yes.
Could have told her before she left
He really
and
truly could
chose not
have.
to.
Instead, he
I
was
don't
like,
think
"You're
we
gonna die," and she was like, "Okay, bye."
like that whole like ah I'm so I've read this multiple times and I'm still this angry. You can only imagine the first time I read this how irate I was. Pretty certain I was at work. I'm sure Orja heard it because I
I
think I
think
read this when
I
I was
read
with
it
you.
at work, and I ran over to you, and I was like, "Colleen!"
I know. Just I don't know. I worked a lot with I don't know if I've mentioned this. I worked a lot with like sexual assault victims and domestic violence victims and stuff for a long time. I haven't done it in a while now, but I did. But just like knowing what that does to a person and how that feels, it's just wild. Like
Mhm.
being Violet in that moment, learning not only that you've been lied to your whole life, the person that you've trusted probably by far the most, even more than your family, outside of like her siblings, betrayed you in such a like personal way because he didn't trust you with
Right.
the information either. Like he tries to pose it as this like, well, I was doing it for your own good and to protect you. It was only for his I hate when men, not only men, but when like abusers do this because that's what he is at this point.
Mhm.
When they try to be like, well, I'm doing this for your own good. I'm doing this for you. It was truly only to further his own career. It was only to
Exactly.
further his own thoughts and ambitions.
Mhm.
And he tries to wrap it up in this manipulative thing of like, well, I had to know to protect you. I had to know to help
Yeah.
and care for you.
He
No,
almost feels like vindicated because he knows that they've been sent there to die, and he's like, in his mind, it's almost like he's like, "Well, I was doing it to protect her, and she wouldn't let me protect her," which
it's
flips the whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, it's now on her. She now holds the guilt for him invading her, for him invading her.
Yes.
Like it's just mind-boggling. Also, like if he could see, she very clearly had no idea. It's not like she was actively like she knew that they had done things, whatever. But in her mind, truly, they really hadn't done anything wrong.
Mhm.
Like, which I don't think she would have assumed they were doing wrong anyway. So, but that's a whole thing.
No. And she also
Like,
like, she didn't know any of the details. She had no clue what was happening. Like we've said
yeah,
in past, well, now we know where they're going all the time, like we've, theorized in
yeah,
past episodes, like, for all we know, they could have been going on secret missions for the school. Like, she had
yes,
no way of knowing.
yes. So, just this was the part that like I was really trying to give Dane the benefit of the doubt because I get like he's been through this war college thing. He's like trying to figure it out. It makes me think, and I think that's really what Violet is seeing. He didn't turn into this because of this war college. This is not like an overnight change. This is how he's been the whole time. I think Violet just has a better vehicle of seeing it, especially
Mhm.
from like she's not really had anyone else in her life to tell her that this is what he's doing. Now
Mhm.
she has Zayden and all of the marked ones to be like, hey, what he's doing is wrong. What he's been doing to you is wrong.
Mhm.
You shouldn't be like engaging or like, giving him a pass, which she does not, to her
Mhm.
credit, does not give him a pass for really any of it. From the moment she stepped in there, she's like, why are you behaving this
Yeah.
way? But she always views it as like he changed. And I don't think it's he changed. He just feels more emboldened
Yeah.
to be able to do the things that I think he's always done. He's just a little bit, he's more bold about it
Yeah, I
instead of
think
subtle.
so too, especially, like, she was going to be a scribe. I think she would have even welcomed some of that protection before
Yeah.
she knew what she could do for herself.
And
And
I will say, oh, so sorry.
oh,
Continue.
I was just gonna say, and then also not only just the marked ones, but like Rhiannon and Riddick
Hmm.
and Sawyer, like they all really believe in her and fight for her autonomy as well. Like Rhiannon gets so pissed off at
Yeah.
Dane for everything that he does.
Yeah.
So, like, it's the
Which
first
is
time in her
wonderful.
life that she has friends who aren't trying to protect her, they're just being her friends.
Yes. Which something I will state maybe as like a foil or like a juxtaposition, Liam is a protector for her. So there's
Mhm,
nothing I don't think there's anything wrong. I think some women think like, like, oh, I want protection. There's nothing wrong with seeking protection as
right.
either gender. Protection is comforting.
Mhm,
But the way that Dane wants to do protection versus the way that Liam does protection, I think is a very good way to see like what healthy and normal and like actually caring protection
mhm.
looks like instead of what Dane is, which is very manipulative to get what he wants out of it. Like Liam's not really gaining. I mean, he's gaining Violet's friendship, but he's not really gaining anything
Yeah.
by doing it. I mean, I know like Zayden told him, and I don't think he would have without Zayden telling him to do it. So I
Mhm.
mean, I know there's some of that, but I don't think Liam has any like ulterior motive
No,
for
he
doing it.
also like works to build a relationship with Violet to like
Yeah.
offer her friendship and trust. I mean, it's a two-way street between them. They both
It
offer
is.
each other trust and friendship there.
Yes.
So,
And I think Dane
yeah.
could have been that, and he chose not to be.
And also actually I think like in a way Violet also offers a little bit of protection back. It's like emotional support in a world where
Yeah.
everyone's extremely biased against Liam. She is steadfastly like, "You guys are all wrong. This is a good person
Yeah.
standing beside me."
Correct. I think she recognizes that like privilege element that she has, essentially of
Mhm.
being like, I have a position of power more than they do at this
Mhm.
point, and I understand that they can't defend themselves, so I'm going to do it for them and to get people to see what I'm seeing for
Mhm.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Yay.
this is mostly just I hate Dane. Like this was the most irredeemable part of this for me. Like I really
Yeah.
tried in the beginning. So fun fact, especially if you listen to the dramatized version, Dane, the way that the voice actor reads Dane is so perfect. It's so flirty. Like you want to love him in the beginning. It's so flirty and so fun. And you're like, oh, like he seems so cool and like interesting and just really like desperately protecting her. And then the more like his story starts to unravel, you're really seeing like the diabolical elements of it. And you're like, oh,
I have not listened
ugh.
to the dramatized version, and this makes me really want to.
I didn't finish it. I actually got to a point because I was like, I like Dane too much that I had to stop because I was like, I know what's happening. But he feels really like the way that the lines are read by this voice actor was not the way that I was anticipating them reading, and they did such a good job that I was like, oh, okay.
That's
This makes a
incredible.
lot more sense.
Side
Yeah.
note, graphic audio, if you're out there, we love you.
We do love you. Also, if you would like a voice actor, I promise I can talk slower if needed.
Yeah, same, same. I can do voices.
I can only do a Southern accent. So if you need a Southern Belle character or just my normal voice, I got you.
Yeah.
That's
It
all I
takes
have for you.
it takes me a while. I could do a southern accent too, but it takes me a while to get into this one, but I can sort of do a British accent too. Sorry for all of my, English friends out there who disagree with me hardcore. I can pass in terms of audiobook reading with an English
Yes.
accent. So,
Yes. I will stand by the fact of one, I have a mild Southern accent, and two, we listened to a book. It was actually the first book that I ever listened to in book club with Orja that had
the
the most
worst.
atrociously Southern accent to the point that it made me hate the book. The book was actually not that bad. The audiobook was just, I don't think it was this voice actress's fault. They really told her to lean in, but it was
It was pretty
awful.
bad.
So I feel like I can do better than that.
Mhm.
Therefore, I would be a very good Southern Belle.
Yeah, graphic
So,
audio. This is our auditions. Hello.
Iris, please.
Hi,
Hello.
this is my southern accent. See, I can do it. I don't know where in the South I'm from, but I'm from somewhere in there.
Sounds a little Mississippi, I would say.
Sweet. I think it might be Florida, actually, like Florida Southern.
No, that would track. Yeah, it's
I
that
lived
like
in
so
Florida as
I'm
a child, so
that's fair. I am from like the Texas South, so mine tends to be a little bit more of a drag and a little bit higher.
nice.
So that tends to be yours goes a little deeper. Southern Belle is just talk like this, you know. So anywho,
Yes.
that's also the only voice acting that I do in D&D. So also D&D things. Come find me.
Let let me see if I can do it. Yes, this is my British accent. And
Oh,
in fact, when I've actually spent a lot of time in the UK, and so I've had quite a bit of practice hearing the accent, and so it takes me a little bit of time to like really get into it, but the more I do it, the harder it is. The harder it is to like get out of it, but I'm not going to go there right now. Anyways, graphic audio.
this is our audition tape.
This is
Did we
our
do a good
audition
job?
tape. I don't know how much of this I'm leaving in, but I have to leave at least some of it in.
Please leave it in. It's really funny. Okay, anywho, I think that's mostly all I have. Basically,
Mm.
what we're gonna is respect women, respect their bodies, and respect their bodily autonomy to do with it what they will, and don't invade that just because you think it's better for them. That's my rant. That's
I love it.
it.
That brings Colleen's Corner to an end. Tied up with a nice little bow. I do think we have some new characters. We have
We
King
do.
Tari.
Mm-hmm.
We
Who
finally meet him.
is something.
Um,
He's so much jollier than I was anticipating, by the
I
way.
know,
He's
which
just
is like
a jolly man
terrifying.
for like
Terrifying.
such an evil person, which also I guess we're assuming he knows, but we don't really know. We don't know how much like some of the generals and stuff are like
Yeah.
fencing it. But well, we do know that he knows. Never mind. We do know. We don't know yet, but he does know.
Yeah. He is like this very jolly sort of evil person, which is mind-blowing.
Terrifying. It's the
Yeah.
worst kind.
And
Yeah.
then we get the Griffin Riders. Dun dun dun.
And then they're not evil. They're sassy. They're very
Yes,
sassy, but
they
they're
are.
not necessarily evil.
They're not evil. Zayden and his crew have been sneaking out to offer supplies to them because they can't fight against what is out there.
Mhm. Which
So,
is terrifying.
yes,
Because also, griffins are wonderful. They're not dragons.
they're not dragons and they don't have magic.
They don't have magic. Well, they have lesser magic,
They have
but
lesser magic. They don't have the signets.
they do not have signets. Yes, I don't know if we know the whole magic part, but fun fact, they have lesser magic, so they can do like the unlocking of the doors and the pins and
Yeah.
all that jazz, but they can't do the like lightning.
Yeah.
It's not in their
Can't do the
capabilities.
lightning.
Time for a deep dive.
Let's get to world building, shall we?
Ooh, we really open it up here.
We really do. So I'm going to read the letter from Violet's father. So this is when they find the fairy tale book and they're just looking at it. And Zayden says, "What's that?" Looking over my shoulder, not sure, balancing the heavy book with one hand, I tug what looks to be a stiff piece of parchment free from where it's been tucked behind the binding. Gravity shifts as I recognize my father's handwriting, and it's dated just a few months before his death. My Violet, by the time you find this, you'll most likely be in the scribe quadrant. Remember that folklore is passed from one generation to the next to teach us about our past. If we lose it, we lose the links to our past. It only takes one desperate generation to change history, even erase it. I know you'll make the right choice when the time comes. You have always been the best of both your mother and me. Love, Dad. Dun dun dun! Um,
Wild.
so that is where it takes one generation to change or erase history. And then I am going to take that and skip all the way forward to where she's sort of like everything comes crashing down on her and she's like realizing what's actually been going on. I begin to think, really truly think. If then didn't exist, we'd have record. And yet there weren't any copies of the Fables of the Baron in the archives. The one location Navarre should have a copy of every book written or transcribed in the last 400 years, which means Dad didn't just give me a rare book, but a forbidden one. 400 years of tomes and not a single one. 400 years. But our history spans over six. Everything is a copy of an earlier work, the only original text in the archives older than 400 years, around the time we fell into war with Boromir, are the original scrolls from the unification over 600 years ago. It only takes one desperate generation to change history, even erase it. Dad spelled it all out for me. He'd always told me scribes hold all the power. And Taryn's basically like, yep, think about that. And discuss.
My thought on this always is I get that it's a book, and that's the point. But why not just tell her? Why not just tell her? Like he's clearly like telling her growing up with these stories made them like very precious to her.
Mm-hmm.
Why not just tell her? I don't really get it. I don't
The
understand
dad
why
not
he
tell
didn't.
her?
Yeah. Because he knows she's gonna have to figure it out eventually. And he's just like hoping she'll make the right choice. That just seems like such a risk
It does.
for her and her safety, honestly, both. Because like she's not gonna have the pull and the sway
Mm-hmm.
once she's so deep into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really understand.
I think this is where we can go and expand upon a little bit. Warning, this is spoilers. This is
Yeah,
important. It's spoilers, but we don't have any. It's not like concrete spoilers. It's like in theory spoilers. Um
yeah,
there's a lot of mystery surrounding her dad's death. We don't
it's true.
know what killed him. She thinks it was his broken heart. But if he had a broken heart, would he have still had, like, the presence of mind to write her that note that he did for her? That's not someone to me who's dying of a broken heart. That to me is someone who's like, I'm going to die. I better write this letter to the one person I think would be able to do something about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And then yeah, we don't really know. And then again, no one talks about him except for
Mhm.
Violet. She is the only one. So knowing that the entirety of Navarre is a conspiracy, there's a lot of mysterious theories flying around out there about what actually happened to Violet's dad.
Also some theories that he's not actually Violet's dad, but that's a whole other thing.
What? I don't think I know that one. That's fine.
Do you not know that one? There's a theory, I think Rebecca definitely, like, was like, "No, that's not true," but there's a theory that she was actually the daughter of the god of death. So, like, the
Oh.
god of death they talk about so much,
Mhm.
it's mostly because of her hair, like, they're really trying to figure out I think that's just a symptom of the, like,
Whatever illness.
whatever illnesses I think it's based on Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a
Mhm.
thing in our world, but, I think it's just a product of that, but because her hair is, like, silver, people are like, "Ooh, is she, like, descended from a god?" Which does make sense, that's often a marker of
Yeah.
that in other novels, but I don't necessarily think that was what Rebecca as far as we know. I do think she was like, "No,
That's
that's
definitely
not it."
not it.
That'd be
I
cool,
would
though.
be it would be cool the hair was literally just
It
if the
just does
hair
that.
didn't mean anything. I think that would be a cool move.
I don't as far as we know, I don't think it does. I think
Yeah,
that's just what it does.
it's just there. Yeah.
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 Yeah. But that was
So
always
yeah,
my thought with the dad. Just just tell her and her mom.
just
Like
tell her.
her mom makes more sense because her mom's like, "I'm not going to tell you."
Yeah,
But like her dad very clearly wanted her to know.
right. And so that's the other thing. We don't know how deep in at this point her mom is with the conspiracy. We don't know exactly what she knows.
True.
We do know that she has a dagger similar to the one that Xaden gives her in these chapters that's supposed to be
Mhm.
good for fighting the venom. So,
The tear stagger or whatever, yeah.
yeah. So we do know that she knows at least that much. We don't know how much of a hand she's had in building the conspiracy and upholding it,
Mhm.
versus just trying her best to maybe protect her family. Like, who knows? We don't know a lot about her either,
True.
other
Yeah.
than she's kind of a bad mom.
Hey, neither one of the parents get a pass. I'm gonna be so honest. Also, that letter is so very much like "You're my favorite"
Yes.
that the dad wrote was
Yeah,
like, "Hey, you're the best of your mother and I. You have 2 other children.
you do.
One's
Well,
dead,
one of them is dead,
but
but
one of them is dead. But still, you had 2 children, 2
yeah.
other children. Like, you're the best of your mom and I," and you're like,
It's like, excuse me. Also, I just it's this whole thing again. It makes me question one more time. Why did Violet's mom make her go to the Writer's Quadrant when it was so clear that the plan was to go to the Scribe's Quadrant? In the Scribe's Quadrant, she would have had access to all of that knowledge. She would have,
"Mhm,
but there's no telling. I mean, yeah, she has an inquisitive mind, but she would have been even further indoctrined into that,
yeah."
like,
Writers are
cult of
naturally
knowledge.
rebellious.
Yeah, so I like that's the other thing that makes me question Violet's mom's motivations here. It's like she was like, you are absolutely not going to be a scribe, you're going to be a writer.
I can't decide if she wanted her to have the ability to defend herself, which she would not have learned in the Scribe
Mm-hmm.
Quadrant. I also if we're going along the theory that that her father was not killed off by natural
Mm-hmm.
means, if her mom thinks it could be the scribes, which I don't think is far-fetched,
No.
she may have been like, "They're also going to kill you."
Mm-hmm.
Like, "You're not going unless you, like, go along with it." Like, it makes me think almost like the dad decided to not go along with it, and they killed him off kind of thing. And the mom's
Ooh.
like, "If you go into there, I know you, I know my children. None of you listen ever in a day in your life. You will die."
Yeah, that's so interesting, especially because with all the knowledge, obviously, Violet, the master poisoner, I'm sure several
Yeah,
scribes would have the access to kill her and make it look like a natural death.
100%. Yeah, like
So,
it would not be
very
difficult at all.
interesting. Very interesting. I love this so much. This is the part of Fourth Wing where I was like, everything started falling into place, and I was so excited about it.
It's more than just like a war college with dragons. Like now we're getting into like conspiracy and the villain. We finally found the
Yes,
villain.
we finally know who the villain is.
Yeah. Which is not necessarily a negative, but it is quite late in the book. Like I guess
It
you
is.
think you know what the villain is, but we never they seem so far off.
Right. You think it's Griffin Riders, and you don't, yeah, they're very far off. You never see them. You don't actually see, they talk about the destruction that was left, but now that we know that it's not them and it's Venom, it actually makes so much more sense.
It does.
Because,
Well,
like,
the whole like Mira seeing dragons.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Mira seeing dragons, it was wyverns. And then even just like I think I had brought this up in a previous episode too, where I was like, how are Griffin Riders such a threat? Dragons can literally breathe fire, and they're
Yep. They could
bigger
just
than
send them.
griffins. Like, I don't understand how they're such a huge threat to these people. And now you're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's because they're not. They're just fighting the real villain out there all by themselves and not succeeding, basically.
They are a threat to Navarre from the standpoint of maybe not from power, but of knowledge, which
Yes.
is definitely like a running theme in this, where like they
Mhm.
are like if more people understood and saw all of this, it would definitely be a whole different like
Oh, yeah.
situation. So I do think they are like a villain of the like Navarre conspiracy element from like
Mhm.
to Navarre they are dangerous, just not for the way
Yes.
not physically.
Not physically, not the none of the destruction is actually. I mean, I think they do like loot towns and stuff like that, but the ones where like the town has been completely destroyed, clearly that was not the Griffin Riders.
I agree. Also, if you hear my cat, I'm so sorry. He is making an appearance, so he's gonna be meowing. He's on the other side. I'm actually gonna go close this door because he's gonna go in there and he
He's so
will
cute.
ransack everything.
Okay.
He is very cute. If I can snag him, I'll see if I can get him on camera, but he's not gonna sit up here with me very long. Give me a
Also, for
second.
folks watching along, this is my childhood bedroom that I'm sitting in right now. I was indeed a princess. Um, it is yellow, except for the wall behind the bed, which I'm facing right now, which is bright red. So, little insight into crazy me in high school.
He will not stay. But this is
Ah,
my cat.
hello. He's so
He
cute.
said, "Boy." Yeah, he's gonna jump away. Maybe, maybe not. Oh, are you gonna stay?
Stay.
He might stay. He probably will jump down in a minute, but he is intrigued.
That's
So
exciting.
his name is Cedric, based off of Harry Potter, because I do genuinely love books. So, um,
Love it.
no, he's gone.
Oh,
Alrighty.
bye, Cedric.
Anyhow, so if you hear some shuffling and meowing, it's just my cat.
I can't hear any, so.
Okay, well, good. He was meowing pretty loud. I was like, you're gonna hear that. Alrighty.
All right.
I forget where we
So,
were.
um, the conspiracy and the intrigue is really fun. This is also, I mean, we get a whole lot of spice in this section of chapters as well.
We do spice warning
Spice
for
warning, spice warning.
spicy warning. We do get so much spice in this section.
It's so good.
It's quite detailed in a way
It
that's
is
not
very
vulgar.
detailed. No, it's not vulgar. But I
Yes.
was listening to it while I was driving to pick up my uncle and cousin from the airport. They weren't in the car with me. I hadn't picked them up yet. And I was driving and I was just like, "Oh, I forgot like how intense
Uh-huh.
these scenes were." Yeah.
It's very romantic, I would say,
Mhm.
in a way that I think maybe not romantic, but like kind of. There's definitely like an emotional connection between them that you can like feel
Yeah.
in it that makes you a little more like, oh,
It
okay.
makes you feel things a little bit more.
It does. I do
Yeah.
remember, I think this was the section. So I read a lot at work. I listen to books. I was when I reread this a while back now. I was this section and like someone like walked in and I was just like, which again, I have headphones, took it out, but like trying to switch from like listening to this to someone being like, "Hey, so I have a payroll question." And
Yeah. Very
I'm like, "No,
difficult.
sorry. Give me a second."
Hold on.
Yes.
Um,
Um
Zayden Ryerson is a great lover.
yes. Again, this is not the first we're grown women. This is not the first spicy book I've read. It's one of those where I actually believe that Violet's actually having a good time.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, don't know if the female character
Is
or even the
actually having
male,
fun. Yeah.
like, 'cause sometimes like the way it's described, it's like too. He really seems to enjoy the things that he's doing and the way that he's doing them,
Yeah.
and he knows what he's doing.
He does. I'm trying to there's also a lot of like mind talking while they're like having intercourse, which is
Yeah.
also another extremely
I can't imagine how intimate that must feel because it's not like you're speaking, because like talking is still very intimate in that setting. I can't imagine like mind talking
yeah.
in that context. Like that would just feel like I feel like a lot more intense.
Yes, the connection is I think even more like at one point she like thinks that she's going to die and he like responds to it and she's like I didn't realize I said that out loud, which is another thing that people have a lot of theories about. In the book,
Yes.
when they're talking mind to mind, it's always in italics.
Hmm.
And it's not in italics. It's just Violet thinking, I'm not going to survive this. I'm going to die right here in this bed. And then he goes, then I'm going to die with you. He promises, kissing me. I'm so far gone, I didn't even realize I said the words out loud. And then I remember that I don't have to. However, in every other instance, when she
It's
speaks
in
in her mind, it's
italics.
italics. And there's no quotes around it either. So if that's like a writing device, like that's fine, but there's a lot of
Hmm.
theories that she wasn't speaking to him, she was just thinking it, but he somehow heard it anyways,
Which is interesting.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
Um there's another thing that I wanted to read here that's probably my favorite quote in this book. She goes, "Oh gods." And he goes, "Which one are you calling out for?" He asks, against my flash, because it's just you and me in this room, Vi, and I don't share.
It's so good.
I'm dying.
He's very good with words.
He
Which I
is
think is part of what makes it feel so like he's very talkative, I guess, maybe. Like
yeah,
it's not like a silent affair.
communicative. He's
Yes.
communicating with her. And it's
Yes.
not like the thing that I think we've talked about this before. I really hate it
Mhm.
in books where they're like doing dirty talk, but it feels extremely forced and like they're
Yeah.
being filthy just for the sake of shock value. Like it doesn't feel like something that
Mhm.
people would actually be saying. It seems like
Yeah.
someone's like, I'd be really hot if they said this, but then it turns out to not be that hot.
It's more of like they're playing a scene and not
Yeah.
actually engaging in the act. Yeah.
Yeah. None of that here. Everything that Xaden says is like in the moment makes total sense.
It does. I think it definitely shows his like obsession with her
Yes.
and how much I think he's thought about it.
Oh,
Cuz
yes.
like he's like you are not getting away. He's like I finally got the thing I want.
Mhm.
You're not getting away from me. You're
Yeah.
mine.
They
Kind of
start
element.
counting the lightning flash. We can call them lightning flashes for my sake because that is also what they are. Um
I mean, which I understand that they do that. But it has to be
it's so
like from a
funny.
Violet perspective. And like I know in theory because like keeping in context with all of this, right? Her mom lives at the college. Her mom doesn't necessarily know what's happening, but if her mom ever found out, mortifying.
Yeah.
Mortifying.
Yeah. That would be so embarrassing. Um
In general, it's embarrassing. I get that she doesn't necessarily know how to control it yet. They should figure it out.
they definitely need to. I think they even like talk about that during this scene where he's like, "That's one, that's two." And I think there's a moment where she's like, "I need to learn how to control my power, otherwise everyone's going to know what we're doing every single time."
Can you imagine being like Garrick and Bodhi and Liam and like Rhiannon, who knows?
Who knows?
And they're just
Yeah.
like,
They're just like, "Dear
what?
God."
I'm sure Rhiannon's like, get it.
Yeah. Oh, Rhiannon is super supportive.
I feel like, but like Bodhi is Zayden's cousin. I would be like, I am begging you.
Yeah,
I
please
am
stop.
begging you. Make it stop.
Yeah,
Like your shadows can make it stop.
yeah,
Make it
please,
stop.
please stop. Yeah. I think she like breaks through a window at one point during this chapter. Anyways, it's phenomenal.
He does.
If you
Very well
enjoy
written.
this, if you enjoy the spicy scenes, chapter 32, I think it is,
I think it
very
is. Yeah,
good.
very good. So, like, which this is involved with the spicy scene, but it's not necessarily the whole section of Garrick having to come get them is one of my favorite. Like, that might be my favorite thing in this whole book. Like, the spicy scenes are great. I love a little comedic relief in the middle of like a weird situation of him being like, I would literally rather like he's like, this is not intentional.
Yeah,
I could care less about this. I'd rather be anywhere else. He should be with Imogen, but that's a whole other issue.
he should.
He's like, I'd rather be anywhere else. Um,
Yeah. Zayden's like,
he's just like, it's life and
someone
death.
better
And
be
he's like,
dying. And he's like, literally, people might be dying. So
people
please.
might actually be dying.
Yeah.
He's like, I promise you, there was no other reason I would come get your ass in this moment. Like, we all know what's happening. We've seen the lightning.
Yeah.
Like, we know.
So good.
It's Garrick is, I think, is underratedly really funny.
Mm-hmm.
I love Garrick as well.
I do too.
I think Riddick is actually quite funny, but I
Mm-hmm.
think Garrick's like dry timing
Mm-hmm.
is quite funny, and I think in this instance we get a really good like glimpse
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah. So I think we can officially move on from the spice content. There's just one more thing I wanted to talk about. And that is Taryn and Andarna knowing everything and keeping it from Violet as well.
That would be wild.
Yeah. I mean, it's like sad. She's like, but Taryn really, like, he apologizes for it so sincerely. He's like, we kept this from you, and we know that it wasn't the right thing to do, but we didn't want to force any information on you. Like, she's in such a fragile situation with her mom being who she is.
Yeah.
And like and now she's got, one of the most powerful signets. Like everyone is really has their eyes on her. And so they're trying to protect her and let her come into the knowledge in her own way. This comes back to her father should have told her something. She would have been so much more prepared.
I think there's a lot of people, and I think this is eventually what Violet gets upset about in general. And I understand this grievance of it's a lot of people making decisions of what she can and cannot handle, which is really what's coming to fruition. And I understand a protective element, especially from like a Zayden standpoint. His makes a little more sense to me because his is like a broader thing, and also her relationship with Dane is complicated, and so like that makes sense. But from like a Taryn and Andarna standpoint, she's kept Andarna's secret, so it's not like she can't process information and keep it from people and not see that it's counterintuitive, right? Like there's not like so that I think always made me like heartbroken for her because like the one thing she loves more than anything in the world is information. The thing that like grounds her more than anything in the world is information, and so many people that she
Have
loved
kept
and
information
respected,
from her.
and it was mostly men, which is
It
kind of
was.
interesting. A lot of men making decisions that she
Yeah.
can't handle
I
things.
don't think Andarna can be held responsible. She's still a child.
She's a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, her mom can be held responsible, but I think her mom bought into the lie, so I feel like that's different than these men that didn't seem to buy into the lie, keeping it from her. That feels different to me.
It also makes me question, and I don't actually know if we ever find this out, but if Andarna and Taryn and Sigale all know what's going on, do the rest of the dragons also know?
They do.
And so are the dragons as a whole, like what side are like I don't understand how that works with this whole conspiracy of Navarre.
It's in the next book.
Okay.
I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's in the next book. It's a whole thing.
I
They
don't
have a whole.
remember the next book, so
I can tell you if you want to cut it out, but we
no,
can.
no, it's fine. I'll read
Okay,
it. I'll read
it's
it.
in
Yeah.
the next book. They have like a council thing
The
about it.
Empyrean.
The Empyrean Council, like they've been talking about it for a while. We learned that, so they do know, and they've been talking about it. And there's a particular instance where essentially you have to make a decision that happens in the next book, and they have a council about it. And
Okay.
yes, yeah,
Yes, but it is wild just that whole not only I mean Taryn and Andarna treat Violet very differently from how the other dragons treat their riders. They're very protective of her. They never do
Yeah.
anything to hurt her. Taryn catches her and makes, you
Mhm.
know, adjustments for her so that to
Yeah.
accommodate like her strength and stature and all of that. But then like the dragons as a whole, it's so interesting that they hold all of the power in the relationship and they don't tell the humans anything.
I don't think they should. I think dragons
They
have
don't
this
trust
thought process.
humans. Mm-hmm.
They don't trust humans, and I think Taryn trusts Violet, but I will say that is a new relationship
Yes.
for them, and they're building it. Honestly, similar to Zayn
Mm-hmm.
or Zayden, Zane, Lordy. Sorry, been on a One Direction kick recently. Although I do picture Zayden as Zane. By the way, that's my
Huh.
fan cast. It's a good one.
Interesting.
Because he's always described having like a darker skin tone, darker hair.
Yeah.
I always picture him like something along like Middle Eastern Indian lines.
I mean, that would make sense. I don't know if my brain like basically doesn't picture anything.
The fan art of him always shows him as a white male. I don't necessarily think he is described
No, he's got like tan skin. Whenever they say tan skin, they mean like
complicated.
sort of brown. Yeah, sort of brown.
He could be Italian.
He could be.
She could be Italian. He could be Italian or Greek if we're really going along those lines. But I prefer to think of Zayn from One Direction because that's who I like.
Yeah,
So, also their names are quite similar.
very similar.
Yes, which is I think a lot of the reason that we did. That was actually a thing in our book club, was we would do cast of characters. So
Yes.
that's why
I
I
was
now
always
think of
really
this
bad
one.
at
And be like,
that.
you were. It's okay.
It's
Fine. Fine. Oh gosh, I kind of forgot where I was going with my train of thought because I got
The
distracted by Zayn.
dragon's
Not you.
not trusting humans, and then the new relationship with Xaden too.
Oh, like with both Xaden and like I get why Violet is upset, but it is a very new relationship between her and Xaden. Less so, I would say, in like the pressure cooker that is the college, but like with her and the dragon. But dragons definitely don't trust
Yeah.
humans. Oh, the other thing I was gonna say is I do think that Taryn is great and like definitely makes all these accommodations. I think the only reason that Taryn does that is he truly thinks he's so much better than other dragons that he can make these accommodations and still beat them. Like
Oh,
the
for
other
sure.
dragons, I don't think have that ego as much. Taryn is like, I am the best dragon,
Yeah.
and no one else can defeat me, so I can make these accommodations. I can make every accommodation you need and still be better than all of them.
I definitely think so. He definitely thinks that. He
He's got a big ego.
1,000,000% is like, I can do whatever I want. I don't care.
He's vocalized that multiple times,
Yeah.
actually, to her.
I
It's
love
so
him
funny
so
to
much.
me.
It's amazing.
I do too. I love the cockiness. I have stated this multiple times. I don't mind cockiness if you have the oomph to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have something to back it up, I get it. If you're
Agreed.
cocky and you have nothing, cock off Dane. I hate you.
All right. I think that was everything I wanted to talk about. Was there any?
Nope, I mostly just wanted to hit on Dane in this
Yeah.
section. He really angered me.
Dane
That's all I
sucks.
had.
Yeah.
It just looks-
Okay. So actually, our next episode, I think, is going to be the last one for Fourth Wing. So
I think it is, yeah.
we will have some information about what's coming next after that.
We're figuring it out.
We're figuring it out. So stay tuned. And have a good week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.